In the Victorian era, food was not just about survival. It was about status, appearance, reputation, and sometimes deception. Behind the elegant dinners, polished silverware, and perfectly presented meals, there was a darker reality, one that most people never saw, or simply chose to ignore, because during this time, food was often manipulated, altered, and in some cases, completely artificial, not to improve its quality, but to improve its image, and what people didn't know could hurt them, slowly, silently, over time. This wasn't an era of strict regulations. There were no modern food safety laws, no reliable inspections, no ingredient transparency. People trusted what they bought, what they were served, what they consumed every single day. But that trust was often misplaced, because many of the foods consumed during the Victorian era were not what they seemed. Some were diluted, watered down to increase profit. Others were artificially enhanced, made to look better than they really were. And some were outright dangerous, containing substances that should never have been consumed by humans. But the most unsettling part? Many producers knew exactly what they were doing. They understood the risks. They understood the consequences. And yet, they continued, because profit mattered more than people. And the public had no way of knowing the truth, at least, not at first, because everything looked normal. Bread looked fresh, milk looked clean, candy looked beautiful, and meat looked safe. But beneath that surface, there was a hidden world of contamination, of shortcuts, of dangerous practices that affected millions of people. And it wasn't limited to the poor. Even the middle class, even those who believed they were eating well, were exposed to it, because the system itself was flawed, built on appearance rather than safety. And slowly, people began to notice strange illnesses, unexplained symptoms, patterns that didn't make sense, entire households falling sick, without a clear cause, but without knowledge, without science, without regulation. There were no answers, only suspicion and fear. And as the years passed, that fear began to grow, because the more people learned, the more disturbing the truth became. This is the story of the most disturbing foods people consumed during the Victorian era. Not the rare ones, not the unusual ones, but the everyday foods, the things people trusted, the things they relied on, and the things that, in many cases, were quietly harming them. And by the end of this video, you might start to question something simple, something you do every single day, eating. Because there was a time when even the most ordinary meal could become something far more dangerous than anyone expected. Let's start with something simple, something that even today feels harmless: butter. In the Victorian era, butter was a staple, used daily, spread on bread, added to meals, served in homes across all social classes. It was expected to be natural, fresh, pure. But in reality, it often wasn't. Producing real butter was time-consuming. It required quality milk, proper storage, and effort, which meant one thing: it was expensive. And where there is demand and high cost, there is always someone looking for a shortcut. Many producers began diluting butter, mixing it with cheaper substances, animal fats, lard, even industrial byproducts, things never meant to be consumed in that form. But the biggest problem wasn't just what they added, it was how they hid it. Because appearance mattered. Butter had to look rich, golden, fresh. So producers began using artificial coloring, chemicals to enhance the yellow tone, to make low-quality butter look premium, convincing, desirable. Customers believed they were buying something natural, something safe, but often, they were buying a product that had been heavily altered, and sometimes contaminated. People who consumed this butter regularly didn't always notice anything immediately. There was no strong taste, no obvious warning sign. But over time, the effects began to show: digestive issues, discomfort, subtle health problems that slowly built up. And just like before, no one suspected the butter, because it was part of everyday life, something familiar, something trusted. and that trust made it dangerous. Now let's move to something even more deceptive. Something small, almost invisible, but present in countless meals. Spices. In the Victorian era, spices were valuable. They added flavor, aroma, character to food, but they were also expensive, especially imported spices. Pepper, cinnamon, turmeric, all in high demand. And once again, where there was demand, there was deception. Many sellers began diluting spices, stretching them to increase profit, mixing them with cheaper materials, ground seeds, thus even powdered brick, yes, brick, crushed into fine particles, blended into spices, completely undetectable to the average buyer. Other substances were also used: starch, colored powders, anything that could imitate the look of real spices, without the cost. And just like with butter, appearance was everything. Spices had to look vibrant, rich in color, fresh. So artificial dyes were often added to enhance their visual appeal, to convince customers they were getting high-quality products. But in reality, they were often consuming mixtures, adulterated substances, with little to no real nutritional value, and in some cases, potentially harmful. People used these spices every day, in soups, in meats, in baked goods, without ever questioning their authenticity, because spices were trusted. They had always been part of cooking, part of tradition. But behind that tradition was a system driven by profit, a system where cutting corners became normal, and where consumers had no way of knowing the truth. Over time, these small deceptions added up, not always causing immediate harm, but contributing to long-term health issues and reinforcing a dangerous pattern, where food was no longer just food, but a product shaped by appearance, rather than safety. Now let's talk about something even more unsettling: sausages. In the Victorian era, sausages were incredibly popular. They were cheap, filling, and widely available. For many working-class families, they were a reliable source of food. Something quick, something affordable, something that could feed an entire household. But sausages had one major advantage for producers, and one major problem for consumers. They were opaque. You couldn't see what was inside. Unlike cuts of meat, where you could at least inspect the surface, sausages hid everything, and that made them the perfect product for deception. Producers could use low-quality meat, leftovers, scraps, parts that would never be sold on their own. Sometimes even meat that had already begun to spoil. And once it was ground, mixed with spices, and packed into casings, there was no way to tell. But it didn't stop there. Fillers were often added: breadcrumbs, starch, cheap bulk ingredients to stretch the product, to increase profit, to reduce cost, and in some cases, even substances that had no place in food at all. Because the goal wasn't quality, it was volume, appearance, profit. And just like with other foods, the result looked normal, smelled acceptable, tasted good enough, which made it incredibly dangerous. Because people trusted it, they fed it to their families, to their children, without ever knowing what they were actually consuming. Over time, the consequences became clear: food poisoning, severe digestive issues, illness that seemed to come out of nowhere. But again, there was no clear connection, no awareness, because sausages were seen as simple food, nothing suspicious, nothing dangerous, and that illusion allowed the practice to continue for years. Now imagine sitting in a dimly lit tavern. The air is thick with smoke. The sound of conversation fills the room. And in your hand, a glass of beer. In the Victorian era, beer was more than just a drink. It was part of daily life, consumed by men and women alike, sometimes even by children, because in many places, it was considered safer than water. But just like with food, not all beer was what it seemed. Producing quality beer required time, care, proper ingredients, and patience, but that wasn't always profitable. So some producers took shortcuts, dangerous ones, to enhance flavor, to improve color, or to increase strength. Various substances were added, some harmless, others far from it. Chemicals that mimicked bitterness, compounds that intensified color, additives that made weak beer seem stronger, more appealing, more authentic. But behind that appearance, there was risk. People who consumed such beer regularly began to experience strange effects. Headaches, dizziness, nausea. Symptoms that didn't always make sense, that couldn't easily be explained. And over time, those effects became more severe. Damage to the body, to the nervous system, to internal organs. But just like before, the connection wasn't obvious, because beer was trusted, it was social, familiar, part of everyday life. No one questioned it. No one suspected that something so common could be harmful. And that's what made it so effective. The danger wasn't hidden. It was normalized, accepted, consumed without hesitation. And just like with so many other products of the time, people paid the price, without ever knowing why. Now let's return to something familiar, something we already mentioned, bread. Because if there's one food that represents daily life, it's bread. Simple, common, essential. In the Victorian era, bread was everywhere, on every table, in every home. For many people, it wasn't just part of the meal, it was the meal. And that's exactly what made it so dangerous. Because when something is consumed every single day, even the smallest problem becomes something much bigger. We've already talked about how flour was often altered, mixed with substances to improve its appearance, to make it look whiter, cleaner, higher quality. But the deeper you look, the more concerning it becomes. Because bread wasn't just affected by what was added, it was affected by everything around it. The way it was stored, the conditions it was prepared in, the environment it was exposed to. In crowded cities, bakeries were often small, poorly ventilated, unhygienic. Flour could be contaminated, dough handled without proper cleanliness, tools reused without being cleaned, and all of it became part of the final product, something people consumed every day, without hesitation, without doubt, because bread was trusted. It always had been. But that trust was built on assumption, not knowledge. And that's what made the entire system so fragile. Because once that trust was broken, everything else followed. By the late Victorian era, things slowly began to change. Not overnight, not suddenly, but gradually. As more people began to question what they were eating, as more cases of illness were reported, as patterns became harder to ignore, attention shifted. Scientists started investigating. Doctors began connecting symptoms to diet. Writers exposed dangerous practices. And for the first time, the public started to see what had been hidden. Not just individual cases, but a widespread problem. A system that had allowed unsafe practices to become normal, to become accepted, to become invisible. And once that awareness spread, it couldn't be ignored. Pressure grew, demand for change increased, and eventually, regulations were introduced, standards were created, inspections became part of the process, producers were held accountable, at least more than before. But even then, change was slow, and for many people, it came too late, because the damage had already been done. Years of exposure, years of consuming products that were never truly safe. And the consequences were not always immediate. Sometimes they appeared much later, in ways people couldn't fully understand. And that's what makes this period so unsettling. It wasn't just about a few bad products. It was about an entire system, a way of life, where appearance mattered more than safety, where trust replaced knowledge, and where people had no real control over what they consumed. So the next time you sit down to eat, think about how much you trust your food, where it comes from, how it's made, what's really inside it. Because today, we have regulations, we have standards, we have systems designed to protect us. But those systems exist for a reason. They exist because of what happened in the past, because of the mistakes, the shortcuts, the hidden dangers that people once lived with every single day. And while things are different now, the idea remains the same. Food is not just something we consume. something we trust every single day, without thinking, without questioning, and most of the time, that trust is justified. But history reminds us that it hasn't always been, and that something as simple as an everyday meal can carry a story far more complex and far more dangerous than we might expect.